Born in the sacred city of Mashhad in 1939, Sayyid Ali Hosseini Khamenei entered the world at a crossroads of faith, tradition, and a changing Iran. His family, marked by deep piety and modest means, was headed by his father, Ayatollah Sayyid Javad Khamenei, a scholar whose reputation for integrity and devotion to Shia Islam would cast a long shadow over Ali's formative years. From the earliest days, young Ali's world was one of humility, religious discipline, and a sense of responsibility carried by the Khamenei lineage, which traced its roots back to the Prophet Muhammad. The spiritual rhythms of Mashhad, home to the shrine of Imam Reza, the eighth Shia Imam, shaped Ali Khamenei's consciousness. He learned the Quran by rote, pored over Arabic grammar, and absorbed the intricate debates of Islamic law that animated the seminaries. His family encouraged not only religious study, but also a love of Persian poetry and literature, instilling in him a profound sense of Iran's historical identity and moral codes. By his teenage years, Ali was fully immersed in the world of Islamic scholarship. The seminaries of Mashhad were his first intellectual home, but his ambition and quest for deeper knowledge drove him further afield. Najaf, in neighboring Iraq, was a magnet for the brightest minds of Shia Islam, and it was there that Khamenei encountered the vibrant currents of theological debate that would define his worldview. Yet it was in Qom, Iran's spiritual heart, that Khamenei truly found his calling. Under the tutelage of grand ayatollahs such as Hossein Borojerdi and, most significantly, Ruhollah Khomeini, he imbibed a vision of Islam that demanded engagement with the world. Khomeini, whose fiery sermons and uncompromising stance against the monarchy resonated with a generation of young clerics, became Khamenei's mentor and guiding star. Khomeini's insistence that Islam was not merely a matter of private conscience, but a blueprint for just governance, had a transformative effect on his pupil. Khamenei saw in his teacher a rare synthesis of faith and activism, one that called for the defense not only of religious tradition, but of the dignity and rights of the oppressed. The Iran of the 1960s and 1970s was a nation in flux. The Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, embarked on the White Revolution, an ambitious program of land reform, women's suffrage, and rapid modernization. But to many of the clergy, these sweeping changes seemed less about progress and more about eroding the foundations of Islamic life. Khamenei, echoing Khomeini's warnings, emerged as a passionate critic of Westernization and what he saw as the Shah's disregard for Iran's religious and cultural heritage. Khamenei's activism took many forms. He delivered sermons in packed mosques, penned pamphlets to rally the faithful, and reached out to students with the message that Islam was under siege. His eloquence, command of Arabic, and ability to weave together classical texts with contemporary concerns made him a favorite among revolutionary youth. He translated and disseminated works by thinkers such as Sayyid Qutb, seeking to demonstrate that the struggle for Islamic governance was part of a broader global movement. The risks were real and ever-present. The Shah's secret police, Savak, kept a close watch on dissidents, and Khamenei was no exception. He was arrested multiple times, his days punctuated by interrogations, solitary confinement, and internal exile. But far from breaking his resolve, these ordeals burnished his reputation as a steadfast opponent of oppression. He became a symbol of clerical resistance, admired not only for his learning, but for his willingness to suffer for his beliefs. As the 1970s drew to a close, Iran stood on the precipice of revolution. The streets pulsed with demonstrations, and the old order began to crumble. When Khomeini, after years in exile, returned in triumph in early 1979, Khamenei was at his side. The collapse of the monarchy unleashed a torrent of hope, fear, and possibility. Khamenei, now a leading figure in the new regime, was thrust into positions of immense responsibility. He joined the Revolutionary Council, helping to draft the foundational policies of the Islamic Republic. As the Imam of Tehran's Friday prayers, he commanded a powerful pulpit, addressing tens of thousands and shaping the moral tone of the nation. His appointment as Deputy Minister of Defense and as Khomeini's representative in the Revolutionary Guards positioned him at the heart of the state's emerging security apparatus. The post-revolutionary years were turbulent. The fledgling Islamic Republic faced threats from within and without: leftist guerrillas, ethnic uprisings, and foreign plots. Khamenei co-founded the Islamic Republic Party, IRP, which played a pivotal role in consolidating clerical power and neutralizing rival factions. His loyalty to Khomeini and tireless work ethic made him indispensable to the new order. In June 1981, a devastating blow struck the leadership. President Mohammad Ali Rajai and Prime Minister Mohammad Javad Bahonar were killed in a bombing. Amid the chaos, Khamenei, seen as a reliable Khomeinist and an experienced administrator, was elected president. He became the first cleric to hold Iran's highest elected office, a sign of the deepening fusion of religious and political authority. Khamenei's presidency coincided with the most perilous years of the Iran-Iraq War. He traveled to the front lines, boosting the morale of soldiers with impassioned speeches about sacrifice and steadfastness. Yet the realities of war and the demands of governance often placed him at odds with Prime Minister Mir Hossein Mousavi, whose economic policies and pragmatic style sometimes clashed with Khamenei's vision. In 1981, Khamenei himself survived an assassination attempt. A bomb, hidden in a tape recorder, exploded as he gave a speech, leaving his right arm paralyzed. The attack became a symbol of the dangers faced by the revolution's leaders, and of Khamenei's personal commitment to its survival. Throughout this period, Khamenei deepened his ties with the Revolutionary Guard and cultivated alliances with hardliners skeptical of compromise. He emerged not only as a survivor, but as a key architect of the Islamic Republic, a man whose authority was rooted in both scholarship and sacrifice, and whose trajectory would soon carry him to the highest office in Iran. When Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini passed away on June 3, 1989, the Islamic Republic of Iran faced a moment that would define the next generation of its history. The question of succession loomed large. Traditionally, the supreme leader was expected to be a marja, a grand religious authority whose spiritual credentials were unquestionable. Ali Khamenei, though a prominent figure in the revolutionary government, did not possess the highest religious rank. He lacked the widespread theological recognition that had legitimized Khomeini's rule. Yet, the Assembly of Experts, under the influence of Khomeini's inner circle, saw in Khamenei a different kind of leader, one whose political acumen, loyalty to revolutionary ideals, and ability to bridge the widening gaps within Iran's ruling elite made him a pragmatic choice for a turbulent time. On June 4, 1989, the Assembly selected Khamenei as the new supreme leader, or Rahbar. To solidify his position, a swift constitutional amendment redefined the requirements for the office, shifting the focus from religious scholarship to political leadership. It was a controversial but calculated decision. The revolution's survival was at stake, and unity among its guardians was paramount. Khamenei, though not the most eminent cleric, was the most reliable steward of Khomeini's vision. Assuming the leadership, Khamenei faced the delicate task of consolidating his authority. Over the next decades, he transformed the office of Supreme Leader from a largely symbolic religious post into the epicenter of Iran's political power. Through deliberate appointments and careful cultivation of loyalty, he constructed an intricate network that extended into every branch of government: the armed forces, the judiciary, and the media. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, became his most trusted instrument, answering directly to him and gradually eclipsing other centers of power. State media was molded into a megaphone for ideological messaging, ensuring that the narrative of the revolution remained tightly controlled. The Guardian Council, a body with the power to vet electoral candidates and veto legislation, was filled with Khamenei's appointees. This institution became a formidable barrier to reformist ambitions, safeguarding the ideological purity of the state. Even as his religious authority remained limited compared to Khomeini, Khamenei's web of loyalists and institutions gave him a command over the republic that surpassed that of his predecessor. He was no longer just the spiritual head of the nation. He became the architect of a state within a state. The late 90s brought new challenges. In 1987, the election of Mohammad Khatami, a moderate cleric advocating for civil society and dialogue with the West, sparked hope for meaningful reform. Millions of Iranians, especially the youth, embraced Khatami's vision of openness, press freedom, and engagement with the international community. But for Khamenei, this surge of reformist sentiment posed an existential threat. He warned of a soft war, a subtle campaign by Western powers to erode the Islamic system from within, not through force, but through culture, ideas, and infiltration. Hardline forces, with Khamenei's tacit approval, moved quickly to suppress dissent. Student protests were met with force, and reformist newspapers were shuttered. The limits of permissible change became painfully clear. The tension reached its zenith in 2009, after the disputed re-election of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. The ensuing Green Movement saw millions take to the streets, alleging electoral fraud and demanding accountability. Khamenei's response was decisive. He validated the election results and endorsed a crackdown that quashed the protests with violence and intimidation. In that moment, he made a choice that would define his leadership, preserving the system through repression rather than adaptation. Throughout his tenure, Khamenei's foreign policy has been shaped by a deep suspicion of the United States and Israel, and a determination to expand Iran's regional influence. Under his direction, Iran has provided support to Hezbollah in Lebanon, propped up Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria, and supplied Shia militias in Iraq and Yemen. The nation's conflict with Israel has persisted, often playing out through proxy groups such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad. While pragmatic at times, especially during the negotiation of the 2015 nuclear deal, Khamenei has consistently opposed rapprochement with Washington. When the United States withdrew from the nuclear agreement in 2018, hardliners, with his backing, reasserted control over Iran's engagement with the world. In his later years, Khamenei has remained a central figure in Iran's politics and its regional ambitions. His public persona is that of a sage religious leader, measured, patient, and unwavering. Yet, behind the scenes, he continues to rule through a tight-knit circle of loyalists, ensuring that the pillars of the Islamic Republic remain unshaken. The country, however, faces growing challenges. Economic hardship, rampant corruption, and a persistent lack of personal freedoms have fueled repeated waves of unrest. The 2019 protests, ignited by fuel price hikes, and the 2022 Mahsa Amini protests, sparked by the death of a young woman in police custody, were met with severe crackdowns, drawing international condemnation. As Khamenei has aged, speculation about his succession has intensified. Among the names most frequently mentioned is his own son, Mojtaba Khamenei, a prospect that raises concerns about the emergence of a dynastic theocracy, a concept at odds with the revolution's original ideals. Meanwhile, President Ebrahim Raisi, a protege of Khamenei, has risen to prominence, suggesting a careful grooming of successors within the established order. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's legacy is complex and enduring. Where Khomeini was the revolutionary founder, Khamenei has been the institutionalizer, turning the Islamic Republic into a security military theocratic state with surprising resilience. He has withstood sanctions, wars, uprisings, and the shifting tides of global politics. To his supporters, he is the guardian of Iran's independence and Islamic identity, a steadfast leader who has protected the nation from foreign subjugation and internal chaos. To his critics, he is an autocrat, whose intolerance for dissent has stifled Iran's social, political, and economic development, isolating the country from the broader world. Today, more than half of Iranians were born after the 1979 revolution. For them, Khamenei's leadership is not a historical chapter, but the lived reality of their nation. The final verdict on his rule remains unwritten. Its consequences, both intended and unforeseen, will shape Iran's destiny long after the era of Ayatollah Khamenei has come to an end.